So before this season started, we looked at the bookies' predictions for who they thought was being promoted and relegated from the Championship. Safe to say that some of those predictions have actually aged fairly well, where others have aged terribly. With only one game remaining of this Championship season, I thought that now would be a decent point to look back on those first initial bookies' prediction from before a ball was kicked. After the season has concluded on Saturday, I'll be reacting to my own predictions. But let's go back in time and see how the bookies thought this season would shape out right at the start of the season. So before the Championship season had started, by far the most tipped side for relegation was Oxford United. They had promotion odds of 33-1 and relegation odds of 7-4, and the fact that they are now mathematically safe going into this final day of the season, I think is a testament to how well they've done this season. The recruitment staff, Gary Rowett, and how well he's done since he's obviously come in, looked to make quite a few changes over the summer with that playing squad. They had to, really, considering they lost one of their most influential players from last season in League One as well, that being Josh Murphy. Full respect to Oxford for getting over the line this season with a game to go. Moving up the table ever so slightly, in 23rd position, the bookies did have Plymouth, and as of recording right now, it looks more than likely that that's probably where they will finish this season. Promotion odds of 20-1, relegation odds of 11-4, so they were the second most backed side to be relegated this season. A lot of uncertainty with Plymouth coming into this year with the appointment of Wayne Rooney that a lot of people were unsure about. Obviously, going back to last season, they just survived by the skin of their teeth on the final day as well. It's a shame with Plymouth, really, because had they made that Muslich appointment earlier in the campaign, I think there's a very decent chance that we're having a totally different conversation about them right now. What's interesting then is the next three sides that the bookies had, they had them all with the exact same promotion and relegation odds at the start of the season. So they had Cardiff, Derby and Millwall all with promotion odds of 14-1 and relegation odds of 4-1. Now, they were fairly spot on with that Cardiff shout in the end. Looks more than likely that they'll be the side finishing rock bottom of the Championship this season. Obviously, their relegation to League One has already been confirmed. Cardiff are a tough one to call for, I think, a lot of people at the start of the season, because at the time, it seemed like they'd made a few decent signings. They'd obviously had a reasonable season last year as well with Errol Bulut as he guided them to mid-table, but the bookies still had them down as one of the relegation favourites, and in the end that came true. They then had Derby in that conversation as well, which is reasonable to suggest. Obviously, they have been around this relegation mix for most of the season. Going into the final day, looks more than likely that they probably will get over the line, but obviously mathematically they're not safe yet. The worst shout of all of these predictions, though, has to be Millwall, who are given the same relegation odds as Derby and Cardiff, and they've been nowhere near that conversation this season. Obviously, earlier in the campaign, there was a bit of a sliding doors moment with Millwall when they were going through a transition and Neil Harris had left the club. At that point, there was a chance that they could have just tanked down the league had they made the wrong appointment. But Alex Neil's took up the reins since then, done a really good job, and they're fighting for promotion right now. They've still got a chance of finishing in the top six come the last day of the season. So that Millwall shout is the first proper stinker that I think the bookies have had in all of these. In 19th place, the bookies had my side, Preston North End, with the same relegation odds actually as the likes of Cardiff, Derby and Millwall, but we had slightly shorter promotion odds. Once again, not the worst shout in the world by the bookies that Preston would be dragged into this relegation scrap this season. Looking back on especially the summer that Preston had, it was all a little bit of a mess really, especially with Ryan Lowe leaving after one game of the season. All our sort of pre-season planning and preparation was just completely thrown out of the window, and we've not fully recovered from that point. Going into the last day, there's still a reasonable chance that Preston could be relegated as well, so the bookies were probably quite right to have us within that cluster of teams. After that, the bookies then had Blackburn Rovers, Bristol City and Swansea City, all with promotion odds of 11-1 and relegation odds of 5-1, and there are definitely a few stinkers in this list. The Swansea shout isn't a million miles away. Obviously, they've ended the season really well and have moved up quite a few positions in the table as a result of that, but for the most part Swansea have been a sort of lower mid-table half side. They've just had that bump up of results recently. With the Bristol City and Blackburn shouts though, yeah, those have aged quite terribly. To be fair, with the Blackburn call especially, I think a lot of people have been caught out by them this season after being in a relegation scrap last season, losing Sammy Smodics over the summer, A lot of people thought that Blackburn might even go down at the start of the season, but they pulled it out of the bag in the end with some of the signings that they got done late into that summer window. Eustace, despite controversially leaving them, left them in a really good position, and going into the final day, there's still a chance that they could make the top 6. And speaking of making the top 6, having Bristol City all the way down in 17th is definitely a stinker of a prediction. Relegation odds of 5-1 at the start of the season. Listen, Bristol City aren't quite over the line yet and into the top 6, but yeah, they've been flirting with the idea of the playoffs all season. It looks like they probably will get in there. In 15th place, the bookies had Portsmouth. This one's turned out to be quite a decent shout, to be honest with you. They had promotion odds of 20-1, but relegation odds of 6-1. Now, I think quite a few people actually predicted Portsmouth to have quite a tough start to the season. As soon as the fixture list came out, it was a really tough sort of first 8 or 10 matches of the season, but there was never really a doubt with Pompey fans that John Mousinho, wasn't the right man for the job. They were always backing him, even after that tough start to the season, and I think the club has been totally vindicated by that. The bookies did have Pompey predicted to be the best performing out of the newly promoted sides coming up from League One, and as of recording right now, that is the case as well. So a decent shout there from the bookies. Another decent shout in 14th place, the bookies had QPR. At the start of the season, they had promotion odds of 8-1, relegation odds of 6-1. That's pretty much bang on where they are in the league table right now. As of recording, going into the final day, QPR are sat 15th in the league, so really not a lot between these two predictions. There's definitely going to be a big job on QPR's hands over the summer with the recent news that's broke about Marty Cifuentes and him going on gardening leave for this final game of the season, but a solid improvement on last season nonetheless. The next cluster of teams that the bookies had predicted to finish together were Sheffield Wednesday, Stoke and Watford at the start of the campaign, all with promotion odds of 7-1 and relegation odds of 15-2. Now, in terms of Watford and Sheffield Wednesday, pretty bob on in terms of where they've been all season, really. Both mid-table sides just falling short of that top 6, neither of which have been really involved in this relegation scrap all season. When it comes to Stoke, though, predicted to finish in 12th, I feel like this is always the case with Stoke at the start of every season. They're always fairly high in the bookies' predictions for if they can be promoted or not, and it just never happens, does it? Listen, they're on 50 points going into the final day of the season. They're not mathematically safe, but it would take quite a lot to go wrong on the final day for them to be relegated. But it does feel like for the last four or 5 years at least, however long they've been in the Championship, they're always a little bit overestimated by the bookies at the start of the year, aren't they? In 9th and 10th, the bookies then had Sunderland and Hull. These two predictions haven't aged that well, and for different reasons, really. Hull, to be honest, were a bit of an impossible call at the start of the season. After Liam Rosenior had left, there was such a transition in terms of completely rebuilding the squad. If you compare Hull's most used starting 11 this season compared to what they were working with last season, it's completely night and day, and no one quite knew how that was going to fall. No one really knew what Tim Volta would be like in the Championship. In the end, it has been a bit of a disaster for the Tigers, and going into the final day, they currently sit in the bottom 3. Now, the opposite of that has been true for Sunderland. Once again, quite a hard call at the start of the season. If you remember back to last year, they ended it in absolutely terrible form. They'd obviously bounced around from different managers last season as well, but they've been a constant in the top 6 this season. First half of the season, we're even battling for automatic promotion as well, and they've already gone ahead and guaranteed that spot for themselves in the playoffs. In 8th place, at the start of the season, the bookies had Norwich, promotion odds of 11-2, relegation odds of 9-1. I don't think many people saw this big of a drop-off coming from Norwich this season. They're 14th in the table right now, and if results go against Norwich on the final day and they lose, they could finish as low as 17th, which would be a huge drop-off from last season. To be honest, I think it was a reasonable shout to have Norwich in that sort of playoff picture at the start of the season. I wouldn't necessarily say that that's a bad prediction based on the quality that they've got in their squad. I just think it's been a bit of a howler, really, from all involved there. Predicted to just miss out on the top 6 by the bookies was then Sheffield United. They had promotion odds of 5-1, relegation odds of 8-1, and this right here, I think, is a testament to the job that Chris Wilder has done this season, because I think it's quite easy to rewrite history, especially at the end of the season when you see how many points Sheffield United have got on the board, the quality that's in that squad right now, and you think, oh, of course, you know, Chris Wilder's got Sheff United in the automatic promotion picture, but that wasn't the sort of arguments that were being made before a ball had been kicked. Let's not forget that this was a Sheffield United side coming into this championship season with a 2-point deduction. They were doing a complete overhaul of their squad. Last season in the Premier League was an absolute disaster for them, and there were also uncertainties about the finances at the club, the takeover at the start of the season as well. Listen, I know that Sheffield United fans will be massively disappointed to have missed out on the top two, but considering what the narrative was then going on around them about the start of the season, they've done very well to finish in third. Then predicted to finish in 5th and 6th by the bookies, they had Coventry and West Brom, both with promotion odds of 9-2, relegation odds of 12-1. Now, it's quite interesting. For the first half of the season, it looked like the West Brom prediction was a lot more accurate than the Coventry one, but then you get to the end of the season, and suddenly the Coventry prediction looks a lot more accurate than the West Brom one. West Brom have had such a tail off from sort of January onwards, whereas Coventry have gone in the opposite direction, started the season quite slowly, obviously made that change in management as well, and it looks more than likely that they'll probably get over the line on the final day. Listen, it'll go down to that Middlesbrough match, but I do think it is a massive disappointment for West Brom to be going into the final day of the season with nothing to play for, especially considering the position they got themselves into, you know, come January. What's amazing then is predicted to finish just outside the top two. The bookies had Middlesbrough and Luton, both with promotion odds of 7-2 and relegation odds of 14-1. I'd be interested to know if anyone did back Luton for back-to-back relegations at the start of the season. That price is considerably shorter going into the final day, with Luton sitting just one place above the bottom three right now. Teams do have an obvious advantage when they're coming down from the Premier League. They have parachute payments. They can continue paying out those bigger wages, and they still have, you know, a lot of their stars from the Premier League. But for Luton, that's not really been the case this season. It was such an underperformance in the first half of the season under Rob Edwards. There was still that negative momentum that surrounded the club. To be fair to them, in recent months they have really picked up the pace, and if they do survive this season, I'd fancy them to have a really decent stab at the top six next year, but yeah, they've been nowhere near the promotion picture this season, have they? For Middlesbrough, predicted to finish in third. I think that was quite a popular shout with a lot of people at the start of the season, myself included. I definitely had them as one of the sides to potentially challenge the top two, but that's just not been the case, and it does feel like they've missed a lot of opportunities this season. But listen, they could still scrape in there on the final day, but it would take quite a bit to go their way. They're going to need to go to Coventry and win, and they're going to need a few results to go in their favour as well. But then we sort of get into the top two, and this is where the bookies were spot on. Predicted to finish in second place, they had Burnley, promotion odds of 5-2, relegation odds of 25-1. Listen, Burnley could still win the title, but at least going into the final day, looks more than likely that they probably will have to settle for that place in second. Even with Burnley, there were still quite a few unknowns coming into this season, obviously with Vincent Kompany leaving, Scott Parker taking the reins. Listen, Scott Parker is a serial promotion winner from the Championship, but even him going into that Burnley job over the summer, I still remember quite a few question marks over him at that time. Once again, he's proved a lot of the doubters wrong, and I mean, Burnley have just been so tough to beat this season, haven't they? But you might have guessed it, claiming that spot at the top of the tree and predicted by the bookies, it was Leeds United. Before a ball had been kicked this season, they did have the shortest odds for promotion, just 11-10, relegation odds of 50-1, and it looks like that prediction has been vindicated. Not just with the bookies, but I think with a lot of Championship fans in general. Leeds were the obvious favourites coming into this season, weren't they? I think, if we're being honest, they probably should have been promoted last season. I think they had a better squad than Southampton last season. They just lost out in that playoff final in the end, but from front to back, I do think they've been the best side in the league this season. Certainly at their very peak, I think they played the best football, and it's no real surprise that the bookies had them predicted to win the league either. But it's certainly interesting to reflect back on those predictions at the end of the campaign now. To be honest, I think there were some decent shouts in there, some poor shouts as well, but I think that's what you get in the Championship, really. No one's going to be 100% spot on, are they? Now, after the season has officially ended, I will be reacting to my own Championship predictions, so make sure to stay tuned for that, and for any more regular Championship coming out on the channel as well. Make sure to subscribe if you are new around here. That'll wrap it up for today's video though, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in, and I'll see you all in the next one.